I think I was kind of crying as I did them. I did them like on my own. I had a backpacking bag, so a big bag, because I brought some stuff to camp with, and then I drove back home the 4 hours. So it was an 8 hour drive in the 24-hour cycle
Wow, that's a big
for
that's
me.
big. That's big. Now let me ask you a
Yeah.
question. Going back to what you said, um did you get that feeling when you got on top of Marcy that you had on Fuji that you were looking for? Like did you get that feeling?
Yeah, so when I had two other people with me, but it was such it was me searching for something for myself, for my own salvation, right? And whether you're hiking with friends or you're hiking for yourself, and if you're looking for something deeper, you do find those moments of flow that is just you and the silence. And that's when I think back of Marcy, all I remember are those this moment that I wasn't talking to anybody. I just went to the side and it was just this blissful silence. And I found some peace there. That I realized that I had to turn myself to nature for more of that to figure this whole thing out. But I needed to do that safely. I needed to do this the right way. I'm a mom. I needed to come back home alive in one piece,
Mm-hmm.
and I needed to be responsible. So I felt the responsibility of doing that. I had great support from my friend, I'm sorry, I had great support from my husband, who's my best friend, who said, okay, like go, because it's an 8 hour drive for me round trip, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I finished the 46er, that was 200 hours of driving.
Yeah, that's a lot of windshield time for sure.
I didn't feel that anymore. You helped so much because every time I was heading there, like at 3 a.m., getting pumped for a specific range, I would listen to the podcast and really laugh so much on your comments. I'm not a big peanut butter and jelly person, but I would celebrate you for it.
Well, I'm glad that the
And
podcast helped kept you awake at those hours as you were driving up to the
yeah,
park.
because you need the help when you're driving that early. And then I started really delving into the community. You saw me popping up in the community, several Facebook groups, and seeking. I had three groups of friends that I made in the community. I had the super 46ers, people who have finished it, people that I wasn't trying to hike with. They were at a different level, or our schedules wouldn't really match, but they would give me valuable advice. And some of them were advice that they would tell me to do things that were not realistic for me. I knew that, but I understood where they were coming from, and I welcomed the advice. The second group of people were the people that I could hike with, but I wasn't quite sure because of where they lived or whatever, or the stage that they were in. And we shared a lot of our challenges and we figured things out together. And the third group of friends, the bucket that I put, people that I could hike with. So I ended up with a list of about 5 people that I could hike with throughout this journey. I think it's important for you to create a short list, because you really need to resist the temptation of hiking alone when you don't know what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Some
It's
people love hiking alone. That's
sure.
fine. But especially when I got into that winter game, you just shouldn't do that.
Yeah, I agree. And a lot of times, I was fortunate when I was hiking through the high peaks that I had a buddy to bounce everything off of, who had already hiked the high peaks years prior and helped me kind of formulate my plan. And I ended up going with him on probably like 30% of the hikes, and then I did the rest solo, just because of schedules, being able to. But if you don't have someone to mentor you in a sense, or a group of people, yeah, it's a tough world to tackle this. It can be dangerous, but exactly what you're saying, and it's good for anyone who is doing this or anything like this anywhere else in the country or the world to seek out help, because you need help. It's okay to ask for help, and you'll be surprised at how many people are excited to help you and to share their knowledge gained from doing what you're currently doing.
And you have to remember how our brains work, right? When we are developing a new skill, it takes a bit of time. Let's say it's 100 hours, right? To become an expert in something. You need to give yourself that time. And when you become an expert of something, when you have done it so many times, certain things become intuitive. You can't even quite explain that you did what you did. You just do it. You could just avoid a certain situation. You just make certain calls. It just pours out of you. And that intuition is not there when you're starting. I came close to a lot of bad calls in the beginning of my journey, but because I was with somebody else who had a little bit more experience than me, they said, "No, if we do this, this could happen. Is that what you want?" I'm like, "Actually, no." And it was adding another peak. Like when you do two and you plan for two, you want to add that third, and you kind of miscalculate.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you've seen it. Like your friends going, "Oh, come on, it's just a mile."
Yeah.
But you don't calculate the elevation. You just go the distance. I just a mile. I can do a mile in 20 minutes. Yay, let's go.
Yeah. I mean, that's how,
And that's a 3 hour hike.
sure. That's how I added Cliff and Redfield to Marcy, Skylight, and Gray. In my
I
brain,
remember
in my
that.
brain, it just calculated as, oh, it's 1.2 miles up, up Redfield, and it's zero 0.9 up Cliff. That's nothing. But like, I didn't double those in my brain. I also didn't double the distance to get there, which was another mile total. So yeah, it's very easy to forget about those things when you
And
just
I
see that one
kept
number.
resisting. I kept resisting the formula of whatever is your time for a mile, right? And that's why I loved using, I for all of my hikes, I like using Gaia and All Trails. I use All Trails to record my stats. I love data. I like looking at the data and competing with myself. I don't really compare with the people that I'm hiking with. When I hike with friends, it's not about that, or with someone who's doing their 46er. It's about sharing that journey with that person. So your stat is your group stat. You need to let your stats go.
Mm-hmm.
But I like to capture that and then think about how can I enhance that. And for Gaia, for me, it's the best navigation. For me, I really enjoy it, especially when you need like that really near, like like 10 feet. Sometimes like there's a margin of error on our trails. Gaia's margin tends to be better.
Okay.
So I've always had them both. And I've always resisted the adding the 1 hour for an extra 1,000 feet. I'm like, no, I could do faster. No, you shouldn't think this way. Just add it.
Sure.
Add an
Sure.
hour for each 1,000 feet of altitude, because that's the way it is. That's the best way to do.
It's always better to overestimate than underestimate as well. So that kind of rule of thought is definitely beneficial to include.
You're absolutely right. And I think that my graduation, the way that I celebrated my 46er to do the presidential range in one go, and it was so cool to do that. I just did it. And I used everything I've learned. It's almost like I went through a course and I used all of the skills that I've learned. I did my calculation right of my time, my stops, my bailouts, like everything I've learned throughout my journey, I was able to put to use. And I felt so grateful.
That's great. That's great.
The Adirondacks gave me such a gift.
Yeah, I mean, they're at this point, like in the outdoors, you could say that they're your first love, and they're going to be what you're always going to compare everything to, no matter where you go in the outdoors. You're going to compare it to hiking in the high peaks, guaranteed. And it's great that it's like
sure,
you create, you created and you learned those things and those tools and those experiences through your experiences. So it's great to see it play out elsewhere. And, that was learned because you chose to tackle this journey, which is now opening an entirely new door of possibilities on what you can do and ways you can spend your time all in the great outdoors, which is fantastic. And speaking of that, so tell us a little bit about how did your family evolve and go from, when you were starting to do this very probably seemingly strange task to them, and then you kept driving up and kept driving up. What was it like from their point of view?
Yeah, like I was someone who didn't really camp that much.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought that I would be in the woods in my life.
Sure.
Working in New York City, living in plains because of my career. and not really taking my kids to spend much time with nature. I did a lot of that when I was little, and I almost like forgot my childhood, how close I was to all of these things that I cherish once again now. So when I came back from that Marcy hike, something kind of clicked. And when I did Cascade and Porta, I did it with my girls and my husband, and they loved it. And it was hard for them. That hike would have taken me 3 hours. It took them 5.5, right? But I was there to share that moment with them, and they loved it. But said, "Mom, we don't want to be doing this whole journey with you. This was fun, but like and then we negotiated, especially with my oldest, because I want her to get into this more. She said, "I'll do the last one with you. I promise. I'll do the last one with you." She's not the hiker. She said, "I'm not a hiker, but I'll do the last one with you," which was Big Slide. With my mom, who's a huge influence in my life, she was very angry. She thought I was being irresponsible because everything just sounded really unsafe, and she didn't want it to be hurt. Like my mind's not the right place, so I'm putting myself at risk, so I could forget everything else. And as a mom myself, I understand mom thinking that way. And when she spoke that way, I took her concern as an extra reason to be careful every time I went out there. But not really believing that it was something that came to stay. But with time, I took the family to small hikes around the area, which is something that a lot of 46ers tell aspiring 46ers, go on small hikes in between. Don't get obsessed with just high peak after high peak. You need to keep, when you cannot hit the high peaks all the time, you have to do something in between to keep yourself fit. And I did a lot of small hikes around with the kids, and they realized my little one asked, are we like a hiking family now? I'm like, yeah, that's what we are now. We hike
That's great.
as a family. And and my friends were very silent. I didn't overshare on social media because this was such a personal journey. But when I would come across something very special, I would join. I would share on Instagram and Facebook. And it wasn't until later that people reached out to me saying that my journey inspired them to seek help in nature. It wasn't like they all drove to the Adirondacks and started doing 46er. No, they saw mountains where they were. They saw parks. They got out and they tried to find that silence. And that really brought me to tears to think that, like your journey, James, inspired mine, and my journey inspired a friend's. That is that gift that keeps on giving, man.
That's fantastic to hear. That's just absolutely fantastic to hear. I also love that your family came up and did the second hike with you, because that, it's like, it's nice to get them involved and familiar with what you're doing, towards the beginning, because then they get it. They understand what you're doing.
They understand.
Yeah, they get it. And that I could imagine that helped tremendously every time you came up, as opposed to you just constantly coming up by yourself and them just like, I don't understand where she is or what she's doing. But that allows them to, cheer you on as well, from home, and to hear that other people, saw your post and saw what you were doing and how you committed to accomplishing this goal, and you kept doing it and kept going. You kept going out there. And then that inspired them. I love hearing that.
That's important, because I heard stories of people having issues with their partners or with their kids because they split between this passion for the high peaks and the responsibilities of home.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't, as I said, you don't have to do the whole journey together. There are families that are doing the whole journey together, and that's incredible. You see moms with babies, in this link, but you don't have to be that family if it doesn't fit your profile. But there are moments that you can bring them in, and that truly helps. So for my husband, our anniversary, we did Whiteface and Esther together for our anniversary, and then we had dinner that night. So there are moments that you can bring them in. The little ones, little, it's kind of laughable, right? Because none of them are little. They're just less hard. So your Cascade and Porter, and then your Phelps, tabletop, and your Big Slide. Those are great hikes to bring family in. And one word of caution is about bringing friends. They are not hikers. They're not really into this journey.